So we're now going to spend a few minutes focusing in on one particular type of racism, one particular type of discrimination that is going on. And I think we're all aware of this. Many of the schools here have done some work on this, but we're going to think about refugees. You will know yourselves, because many of you know Homayoon, that Homayoon himself is a refugee. I just want to go very, very quickly through a few definitions, just so we're all clear, because as Matthew said in many different ways, it's really important to know what the truth is. It's really important for us to be sufficiently informed to be able to politely say, no, you're wrong in this. And so let's be really clear. A refugee is someone who's been forced to leave their home country because of war, because of persecution, because of disaster. And we in Ireland are very proud to be one of hundreds of countries that have signed up to an international agreement that agrees that refugees have a right to seek safety in another country. So they're not illegal when they come here, when they go to the UK, or when they go to any other country. This is their right. The other thing I'd just like to note is that right now, there are over 100 million refugees worldwide. We're not zoning in on this, but if you think of the worldwide number, and we know that there's well under 100,000 here in Ireland, that our numbers are comparatively very, very small. And just one final point before I hand over to Homayoon is that you will occasionally, and Homayoon's going to illustrate this, hear people give you false information about refugees, false, and sound as if they really know it. And this is why we think it's really important for you as schools of sanctuary, for you as young people who are committed to standing up for the truth, to be well equipped with the facts. So with that in mind, I'd like to hand over to my colleague and friend Homayoon. And as many of you have heard him before, he's going to share some part of his story that you probably haven't heard before, but is very relevant for today. So Homayoon, you're very, very welcome.
Okay, thank you, Tiffy. And yeah, thank you, Matthew. So ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, a very good morning to you all. So as Tiffy mentioned, my name is Homayoon, and I'm a refugee from Afghanistan. I am currently working with the Schools of Sanctuary. So let me tell you a little bit why I became a refugee, and how I became a refugee, and what happened to me. So I was working with an international organization in Afghanistan, and I was supporting human rights and education, especially for girls. And my life was threatened, and I had to leave Afghanistan to seek sanctuary. And today I am a refugee. And let me repeat what Tiffy said about refugees. And who are refugees? Refugees are people who are forced to flee their homes, their families, their relatives, their friends, their communities. And it is never a choice or a dream for anyone, even for anyone on this screen today, to leave everything behind and become a refugee. And let me repeat myself, that refugees are forced to flee. It is not going to be a joyous journey. It's a painful journey. And who likes to leave their home? No one. So that is the truth. That is the reality. But on top of all of these troubles and pains that refugees go through, when they arrive to their new communities to seek sanctuary, and sometimes misinformation and lack of information about refugees, it causes racism. And today I'm going to share one personal example of such experiences of racism through an interaction with a man that I knew for almost 6 years. He's a local to Ireland. And I met him over tea, coffee, and we did sport and exercises together for fitness. And he was such a very kind man. But one day he called my name. He said, come here. And I said, what's the story? He said, you know what? You're my Irish brother. But do you know what's happening here in Ireland today? Hundreds of thousands of people are arriving in Ireland illegally, not vetted, no checks by Gardaí, nothing. And they're refugees. They're getting free housing. They're getting free social welfare. They're not working. And then he went on and he said, look, the Black African drivers, they have one driving license and they use that among many of their friends to drive different cars because they look the same. And I listened to him actually carefully because I wanted to hear what he's talking about. And then when he finished, I said, okay, you called me actually that I'm your Irish brother. He used to call me that I am his Irish brother. I'm not a refugee. I said, let me correct you now that I'm still a refugee. I do not have Irish citizenship. And I also know many Africans who are also refugee, and they're wonderful people. But I would like to correct you a couple of things that you said today. As a refugee myself, when I came first, I didn't become automatically a refugee. No one becomes automatically a refugee when they arrive in Ireland. They are asylum seeker. And not necessarily every asylum seeker becomes a refugee. Many of them will be deported, sent back home. So I said, that's number one thing for you. Number two, as a refugee myself, I never received free housing. And I'm working, look at me, I said, I'm working. And many refugees are working. So there's no automatic free everything for anyone in Ireland. And then I talked about the driving license and the vetting. I said, look, as an asylum seeker, when I first arrived, I filled a form, several forms actually, over 67 pages. They were asking questions like, for my parents, my work experience, my previous life, my journey, everything about me. And still, I said, with any engagement I have in my workplace, I'm vetted by the guards. I get checked and I get vetted for anything I do, almost for anything I do. So I said, that's the reality about refugees. And then I realized that how apologetic he looked. And then he just apologized, actually. He said he's very sorry, but he was misinformed about how thousands of people automatically become refugees and get free housing and social welfare and all of that. But I'm very glad that he's not repeating what he said to me. And one thing Matthew also mentioned there, I'm so glad that I had the courage to stand up and say that, you know what you have heard about refugees is wrong. This is the reality of refugee. And he changed quickly. But ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, sanctuary ambassadors, you all know how painful it is when somebody that you have met, that you have known for 6 years, and then next day he changes, he says that, you know, refugees are this type of people. It was very hurtful. And I felt actually next day and the same day, I felt very insecure. I had very low confidence. And I was almost feeling that I have run away from Afghanistan to save my life. And what's going on in Ireland? What has changed? I didn't experience this for the last 6 years. It's just terrible what has happened. All of this anti-refugee thing. But one thing I would like to mention here is that when I engage, when I meet young boys and girls, when I talk to different schools, it gives me the biggest hope as a refugee living in Ireland. And I'm very, very confident that every student can be and is already a sanctuary ambassador. And they can, in fact, promote a knowledge, the truth about refugees among their communities, within their schools, among their parents, friends, everywhere. So thank you so much. Well done, everyone, and very good luck.